Good afternoon to everyone. This is Leah Shortino. I am here at C Junction, and C Junction, as you are aware, is this public venue in Bangkok. As you know, we are holding these updates to really continue to pay attention at what is happening in Myanmar. And today, unfortunately, is what is happening really show how important it is not to forget about Myanmar. Just this morning, there has been a bombing of people in Sagaing state, and more, at the least, according to the news, more than 50, if not even some people say 100 people have been killed, mostly children and women. And this is just one of the atrocities that is going on. So really, we should continue to pay attention, as I am sure also Debbie, our resource person, very well known as expert and activist on issue related to Myanmar and Southeast Asia. I am sure she will also stress again that we cannot, as international community, forget and really is crimes about against humanity over and over again. So please, Debbie.
Hi, everybody. This is really shocking and disturbing news. It's not surprising news because we are dealing with Burma, Myanmar, with one of the most brutal military dictate and illegal juntas in the world. At last month's update, I shared with you the information that during the 5 months of October 2023 to October 2022 to February 2023, the illegal junta of Burma launched almost twice the number of airstrikes in Burma than the number of airstrikes in Ukraine. It was almost double that of Ukraine. And during the same period, Burma, Myanmar had the highest number of airstrikes that affected targeted civilians in the world. We're talking about 34 airstrikes targeting civilians within a space of 5 months, and that compared with Yemen 8 and Ethiopia 6. So it's a very huge difference between that number. So we actually see that when I say this is a tragic and horrible and news that really makes me angry, it's not surprising because the illegal junta still continues. The illegal junta still continues to be launching the highest number of airstrikes against civilians in the world. And today, this morning, when they deliberately targeted civilians who were attending the opening of a People's Authority office in Sagaing. A People's Authority office would have been an alternative local administration organized for the people by the people, instead of being dictated to by a so-called civilian representative of the illegal junta. And this is why they were targeted with such lethal force. And I think we also need to understand now why organizations, movements all around the world, including the Blood Money Campaign, are calling for targeted sanctions on jet fuel to prevent aviation fuel being supplied to the military junta so that they can use it to target civilians with lethal airstrikes. I'm going to share my screen. And I'm sorry, I'm actually sharing something that I planned to share in advance before the news came out. So here is the preliminary photos from the Irrawaddy and the preliminary news. At that time, they said at least 50 were killed in a junta air raid on a village in Sagaing. And Sagaing has actually been one of the places with very intense attacks, partly because this is one of the areas that have been the traditional recruitment ground for the Tatmadaw. And so when the military started to defect from the junta, they attacked Sagaing with a lot of vengeance because they felt that those former soldiers that they had recruited had turned on them. So we see some preliminary photos here. So I think when we think about this and we look at the fact that ASEAN governments have not supported the sanctions on aviation fuel, and they've been trying to take a gentle approach, trying to convince the junta to have some kind of peace talk and to follow the 5-point consensus. I think this is the most damning evidence that ASEAN needs to get tough on this regime. Indonesia has been playing a game of trying to put a little bit of pressure, but not too much because they don't want to split ASEAN. They already see there is a kind of a split between Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, and Myanmar with the rest of ASEAN over the behavior of this illegal junta. But I think now the time is to work out. ASEAN, over about 15 years ago, actually 19 years ago, ASEAN started to move in the direction of being a rules-based organization instead of consensus-based organization. That resulted in the adoption of the ASEAN Charter, while Surin Pitsuwan, the late Surin Pitsuwan, was Secretary General of ASEAN. That moved in the direction of adopting or establishing an AICHA, the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights. But now we've just kind of stopped, we're stagnated. And I don't know if ASEAN understands how serious and urgent this is. If ASEAN doesn't complete its evolution into a rules-based organization based on principles, we will see worse things happening in Burma, and we will see worse things happening in ASEAN. So since the last update, we passed the anniversary of our friend Aku's assassination. So our sister Aku from Justice for Women in Sagaing in Calais was killed by a sniper on the 28th of March 2021, a few weeks after the coup started. She's one of over 500 women and girls killed by the illegal junta. As of last week, there were at least 21,531 armed clashes and attacks, displacing over 1.4 million people since the coup started. The Assistance Association for Political Prisoners says that by this time, at least 21,279 people have been arrested and a total of 150 people sentenced to death. The junta, who's been losing soldiers and police to defections, has stepped up and continued their forced conscription. In Sagaing, where this airstrike just happened, residents in one other part were forced to attend militia training and engage in clashes. In Tanitai region, which is on the opposite side of the country in the southeast, the junta ordered households to surrender one person each to work in the army as a soldier. It feels a little bit awkward to be sharing this joke because of this horrific news of this very lethal and serious airstrike. But in the month of March, at the end of March, the illegal junta disbanded the National League for Democracy and 39 other political parties for not re-registering with the junta-controlled Union Election Commission for the upcoming sham election. We're calling this the Ma election after Min Aung Hlaing, MAH. Basically, Min Aung Hlaing created the situation, he created the coup, and then created the rules that would lead to the dissolution of political parties that won an estimated 88.45% of parliamentary seats in 2020. So if he allowed them to run, they would win against him anyway. And so we are seeing now a very serious moving of goalposts, an illegal junta trying to organize an illicit election by dissolving their main competition. At this time, a total of 63 parties have applied to be registered with the junta-controlled UAC, and 13 are new political parties. And even though they imposed that 28 March deadline for these winning parties to re-register, and they passed the deadline, the UEC then announced it would still allow the establishment and registration of new political parties after the deadline. So, yeah, it's not just shifting the goalposts, it's about changing the entire game completely. I understand that I can't, sorry, I'm getting a message that you can't hear me.
Just the volume, if you can increase.
It's the
Talk
microphone.
stronger, talk louder.
Okay, this is funny. I've never been told to talk louder, but I will. So, excuse me. So we've had the election. We are actually moving towards a election, and we need to understand that Western countries seem to automatically think that any kind of election is better than no election. Let me assure you, a election has already featured a huge amount of violence. This illegal junta has increased their violence. That's why they're willing to launch airstrikes that kill at least 50 people in Sagaing this morning. Yes, that's what they did. They are willing to do that kind of brutality because they're trying to win back territory for them to be able to conduct elections after removing their main competition. So this election is not going to reduce the violence. It's not going to lead to any kind of political solution. It's actually going to make things worse. Now, if you're talking about making things worse, I would encourage you to read Women Peace Network's report that was published on the 22nd of March. We are targeted for being Rohingya in Myanmar and everywhere. The situation of Rohingya since the coup started. So have a read of this. You can go, you can Google this report and download it. Basically, the situation of 600,000 Rohingya still in Burma has rapidly worsened since February 2021. The illegal junta has been targeting them with arbitrary arrest, detention, torture, sexual violence, and murder. The junta has arbitrarily arrested and detained at least 2,753 Rohingya, including over 863 women, and most were sentenced to 2 years in jail. Now, as far as we are concerned, the situation of Rohingya hasn't just deteriorated in Burma, it's deteriorating across South and Southeast Asia, particularly Bangladesh and India and Malaysia. So, you know, I have said this often enough, but I'm going to say this again. Our regional countries are complaining about the burden of having to take care of asylum seekers from Burma. But the reality is that if they push them back and mistreat them, these states are actually perpetuating and prolonging the the impact of genocidal violence by the military in Burma against the Rohingya, we all have a responsibility to contribute and to do something about ensuring their civilian protection. Complaining about the fighting doesn't actually help when we are actually refusing to contribute to civilian protection. If civilians cannot be protected, more civilians will be under pressure to join the fighting. And in the case in Burma, the case of Burma is a case in point. The situation of Burma is a case in point. You can't just say, yes, we're concerned about the situation, we don't want fighting to happen, and then try to push back refugees who are fleeing for their lives. In this case, refugees are not fleeing a neighborhood where there is fighting. They are actually the targets. They are the targets of this attack, as the airstrike in Sagaing this morning shows us. And we're being reminded every day that this junta is targeting civilians. They're not accidentally killing civilians. They're not accidentally burning thousands of homes. They're not accidentally raping and committing sexual violence against women and girls. This is deliberate targeting, and we still have an urgent obligation to ensure that civilians are being protected. And on the subject of the Rohingya, we also saw, and this is where I was reading and trying to and reading through the Coup Watch covering the month of March, which has just been published by ALTSEAN. We've seen a situation where funding cuts to Rohingya camps in Bangladesh have worsened because the food prices are rising. 4 out of 10 children are suffering from stunted growth. So what do we do about it? China, India, Bangladesh, and ASEAN gang up to support a pilot project to forcibly repatriate 1,000 Rohingya back to Burma, where it's a war zone, where an illegal junta is committing atrocity crimes on a routine basis. Now, UNHCR says conditions in Rakhine State were not conducive to the sustainable return of refugees, of the Rohingya refugees. So what do? They go and lend boats to the illegal junta and very obligingly remove the UN's insignia and markings so that these boats can be lent to the illegal junta for them to visit camps in Bangladesh to work out how to forcibly repatriate Rohingya. So it is really a WTF what the fuck moment when UNHCR says, no, it's not safe for them to go back. But hey, here, let us lend you a boat, illegal junta, so that we can take you to the camp so you can actually implement your pilot project to forcibly repatriate Rohingya to Rakhine State, where it is not conducive to the sustainable return of Rohingya refugees. It's like, what are you thinking? Are you capable of logic, UNHCR and World Food Programme? Why are you lending your equipment to an illegal junta to conduct a so-called pilot project to forcibly repatriate Rohingya when it's clear that conditions on the ground are dangerous for the Rohingya? So, yeah, I don't understand. I think maybe I'm not educated enough. Maybe I need a PhD to understand how the UN bodies arrive at this type of logic. What happened last week is also another targeting. In this case, the resistance groups Liberty Thunder and Anonymous Mission Team Alpha apparently fired 7 rounds of improvised artillery rounds at the junta air base at Mingadong Airport, which also affected slightly the Minglodon International Airport in Rangoon. Um, and it was apparently an action to oppose these airstrikes on civilians in the country by the Myanmar Air Force, or the illegal junta's Air Force. We don't really know what the extent of the damage was, but it would have shaken up a lot of people. I recall a couple of months ago being at a round table and having a debate with a member of the Cambodian delegation, who were talking about how they were risking their lives last year to try and help out help resolve the Myanmar situation. This person kept referring to ethnic resistance organizations as extremist groups. And I had to remind her that the real extremist was the illegal junta that was actually in control of less than 20% of the territory. And she very blithely replied that they may be illegal and they may only control a small amount of territory, but foreigners still need to get a visa from them, and they control Mingadon Airport. So thank you, Liberty Thunder and Anonymous Mission Team Alpha, for reminding us that even when it comes to the airport, the junta doesn't really control the situation. And I want to know, if anyone here is a geek about these things, please let me know. Whether you survey all the special names of all the PDFs in Burma, and how they come up with such names. I mean, Liberty Thunder sounds like a really good name for a heavy metal band, but they fired 7 rounds of artillery, improvised artillery rounds at the junta airbase. So maybe they're not a heavy metal band. I think I'm coming to the end now. Tomorrow, day after tomorrow, April 13th, is Tinjan, or Songkran in Thailand. It's Tinjan. Usually Tinjan in Burma is the main festival of the year for the whole country. Like in Songkran, this is in Thailand, it's a water festival. And usually there are all these amazing concerts and public events and parties, but that has not been the case since 2021. And so here's our alternative Tinjan poster, courtesy of our comms guy. And instead of comedy and music and singing, for the Tinjan celebration in Burma, we have airstrikes against civilians, forced repatriation of Rohingya, economic disaster, and more jail and death sentences, plus many more atrocity crimes and crimes against humanity performed by the likes of Min Aung Hlaing and his gang. So that's all I have to say at the end of the display. And I'm sorry I'm sounding a little bit muted. I'm feeling very sober and very sad about the airstrike this morning, and the fact that ASEAN has been extremely wimpy. Indonesia has been trying to do quiet diplomacy behind the scenes, but doesn't seem to be getting very far with it. At this point, we can't even depend on the UN, given what the UN has been doing, lending boats to an illegal junta to help them do work on the forced repatriation of Rohingya, when they have already announced very clearly that the conditions are not conducive for sustainable return. So I don't know what's going on in the world, especially where Burma is concerned. I don't know what people are thinking. It does not seem that we are enjoying sufficient supplies of logic and rationality when we're dealing with Burma during the month of March. So hopefully April gets better. Over to you, Leah.
Thank you very much. And indeed, you didn't seem too convinced at the end about a better future, but indeed today is quite depressing what is happening. So I open the floor for any question that are from here or from Facebook. In the meantime, maybe you can add something about what has recently happened about the Thai government returning some of the PDF people from Mysore to the basically to the junta, in other words, and what you think needs to be done about that. Maybe you can tell us more what has happened.
Well, in the latest news, they said that one out of I think 3 PDF were handed over to the illegal junta, and one died. And the official story is that the person who died was actually shot while trying to escape. The reality is that extrajudicial executions by the junta is not unusual. It seems to be part of their normal behavior, and any government, and it's not just Thailand, it's Bangladesh, it's India, it's China, it's Malaysia, especially more recently in the past year, Malaysia, who knows very well that this is a brutal junta. If the junta is willing to bomb and launch airstrikes and torture and kill civilians, including children, then it is pretty easy to understand and logical to understand that anyone accused of being a PDF or supporter of the PDF or even a supporter of the NUG faces a high likelihood of being executed if they're handed over to the junta. I think if I think it's time for the international community to actually wake up to the fact that while we are paying attention to Ukraine, as we should, we also need to pay attention to Burma. As I said before, the impact on the ground is similar. The economic chaos is worse. And the contrast between what neighboring countries in Europe how they are responding to the humanitarian crisis caused by the invasion of Ukraine compared to our regional neighborhood responding to what's happening, the humanitarian crisis caused by this coup and these war crimes and crimes against humanity by the illegal junta is so different and so irresponsible. You know, it is extremely irresponsible of our governments not to how do I say this? I'm quite upset. It's extremely irresponsible of regional governments to make the situation worse in Burma by denying people civilian protection and by willfully handing people over to certain death. It is irresponsible not just to the people of Burma, it's irresponsible to themselves and their own citizens. Because as the situation in Burma gets worse, so is the threat to the rest of the region. People are talking about Shui Koko, we're talking about human trafficking of ASEAN citizens to Burma by syndicates who are given a license to do so, who are allowed to do so by the illegal junta. For many years, we were exposed to news and cases where Burmese people, where people from Myanmar were trafficked to neighboring countries, and now the situation is reversed. It is people from neighboring countries, from Malaysia, from Indonesia, from Thailand, from Hong Kong, from Philippines, being trafficked to border towns in Burma for all kinds of internet scams and other scams. And this can happen because we are allowing it to happen by failing to stop this military junta.
The follow-up question is relates again on the role of ASEAN. I think there was some enthusiasm initially for Indonesia when it took the chair. As you say, Indonesia doesn't seem willing to really shake the box, so to say. So what is the expectation now, again, regarding ASEAN, and is any hope that they will be wakened by the atrocities that are being committed, or is better just to forget about?
I think there has to be a clear message to Indonesia. Today's airstrike, which killed at least 50 civilians and may have killed up to 100 civilians, coupled with airstrikes targeting a school in Chin State earlier this week, coupled with ongoing airstrikes, which has made Myanmar the country launching the largest number of airstrikes against civilians in the world, should be a wake-up call to Indonesia that the softly approach, the diplomatic approach, does not work. Trying to trying to hold off pressure on Jakarta by saying, oh, we have to do things discreetly and behind the scenes and don't harass us. And all we are seeing is just more airstrikes. Should be enough pressure on Indonesia, on Jakarta, to understand that the strategy that they've taken in the past few months is not paying off. It is just allowing and enabling this illegal junta to commit more violence against civilians. So I think this is going to be important. If for friends who are in contact with Indonesia, and there are some Indonesian friends in the room, please forward this news of this airstrike and this information that Myanmar is now the country with the largest number of airstrikes against civilians in the world, to Jakarta. Tell Ibu Retno Marsudi, tell President Joko Widodo, this is what's happening. It's time to take the gloves off. It's time to take a stand, because even the countries like Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, who are siding with the illegal junta, will be hurt. These countries who ally themselves with the illegal junta will still be hurt by the deteriorating situation in the country. It is in everybody's interest, regardless of their ideology, whether they're rich or poor. It's in our collective interest in this region to stop the violence. And it is the one way to start making an impact is to stop the flow of aviation fuel to Myanmar.
There is a question related about Thailand's election. As we know, the election are going to be soon in Thailand. There is a lot of hope about change, whether, of course, the pessimists say not much is going to change because the election already are the way they are organized, but still there is quite some enthusiasm. Do you see any opportunity coming up of the Thailand election to aspire for a change of Thailand attitude toward what is happening in Myanmar? Is it an issue for in this election or not? And any hope for the future?
Well, I can tell you that a lot of young people from Burma are watching these elections with a lot of interest, because they know that this this election is, how am I going to say, this election has some very important implications, not just on Thailand, but also on Burma. Whether Thailand softens its position and takes a more practical position to takes its more practical position um, to address the situation instead of blindly supporting the illegal junta. I think this is something that's really important and relevant, not just to people from Burma, but also from Thailand. We're kind of concerned to see that the voting day in Thailand seems to have been retimed to coincide with the final exams of university students. We're not sure whether this was intended to prevent or discourage young people from exercising their votes. But we definitely wish the people of Thailand all the best and solidarity for a successful, a peaceful, and a free and fair election. I think that's going to be important. We cannot afford to have a bad election for the people of Thailand, and definitely this region. We need to have genuine democracy happening, and part of the democratic process is a free and fair election, not a mal-election like they are planning to have in Burma. So I think we are not going to be in a position to air our preferences on one party or another, but what we can see is that um, it is in the regional interest that there is a free and fair election in Thailand, but it's definitely in Burma's interest that there is a free and fair election in Thailand, and that our friends of all ages are allowed to exercise their vote.
Okay, we have a number of documents have been shared here by Alex, a story of the termination of BBC Radio Today about the Rohingya, and I think Debbie also shared a number of updates.
Oh no, sorry, it's my mistake. I actually shared it twice. It's the link to the Coup Watch Bulletin covering developments during the month of March, which was published by our team today. So it's hot off the press. If you want to have an overview of what's been happening on Burma during the month of March, it's all there.
So this is important material for us all to keep informed about what is continues to happen in Myanmar. I confess there are not much to say more about what is happening. I think we are all very much aware of the dire situation, and there is also a delusion about the fact that indeed the public attention is diminishing. We have now also Palestine. What is happening there is also extremely worrisome, and is, as you say, Ukraine is still going on, and there are many other situations in the world which really are bringing suffering to, but it's also depressing in a sense that we don't hear more about what is happening in Myanmar. Do you have any idea about funding situation, whether donors have already felt donor fatigue in terms of supporting activities on Myanmar? I am aware that even in Thailand, some of the donors had to reduce what they had initially planned because of cut being made to their budget for Myanmar. Do you have any information about what is the donor situation with regarding to support to activities for humanitarian as well as more advocacy for Myanmar?
In the past 2 months, we've seen a lot of cuts happening in the past couple of months to the Rohingya in Cox's Bazar. And this is terrible because the number of refugees in Cox's Bazar hasn't decreased. Their needs continue to be the same, but the cost of food and the prices of other things that they need for their survival is on the rise. And at this time too is donor fatigue, where donors are not, donor states and donor organizations are not that interested in continuing or not so motivated in continuing donor support. We saw last year a lot of resources, humanitarian resources being diverted to deal with the impact of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And we were already aware that this could eat into any kind of funds available for other parts of the world. But it does seem that there is a donor fatigue and a lack of funding commitment to humanitarian aid. And it is outrageous that this is happening at a time where 30%, at least 30% of the population, we're talking like over 17 million people, are in urgent need of aid in Burma. Where in the case of Karenni State, 2/3 of the population have been forcibly displaced by junta violence, where thousands of homes have been deliberately burnt down by the illegal junta. The livelihood insecurity is extremely high. Livelihoods of people who are potentially supporters of the resistance or potential source of funds for the resistance are being targeted without any fear or favor, without any consideration whether they are really supporting the resistance or could be supporting this resistance. So it is a kind of a madness in the country, and it's quite shocking and unfortunate and saddening to see that people are already talking about donor fatigue. I'm sure the Rohingya survivors of genocidal violence from 2016 and 2017, they have been in camps for already 6 years. I'm sure they're tired of being in the camp. I'm sure they're tired of being exposed to violence, of being vulnerable, of not having enough to eat, not having enough medicine. They're tired too. They have fatigue too. Donors cannot or should not be having fatigue. They should be energized to address this. What about the people who have been displaced by this illegal junta for over 2 years, who've been subjected to airstrikes, who now we've even seen the junta threatening to prosecute, to arrest and drag to court and throw in jail parents who enroll their children in online classes provided for by the National Unity Government. Those parents are being threatened with jail, with prosecution. Young women, last year we saw one young woman in Tanitai in the southeast of the country and another young woman in Sagaing in the northwest of the country, both being sentenced to 10 years jail because they made donations of between $2 or $7 for humanitarian aid. They were accused of supporting the PDF. $2 is not even the price of a coffee. You know, everyone's tired of that. So when people talk to me about donor fatigue, I feel like all these IDPs, all these refugees, all these activists on the ground, even those who've gone to jail, they haven't given up. They feel tired, but they haven't given up. Donors, why should you give up? This is a movement. This is a resistance. This is pushing back on one of the most brutal military regimes in the world. That can't be done within 1 year or 2 months or 3 months or 6 months. It can't be done within the time span of a grant. It's not a deliverable that you can achieve within 1 year. It requires energy and determination and resources.
Related to that, two questions actually. One is related to that. There are voices that people, Myanmar people working for international UN organization also come from a good source, but I am not supposed to say the organization, but the one that work with UN international organization, they have to sign clear agreement that they will not do any activity, that they will accept the authority of basically the actual government. And it seems the international organization are willing to have this kind of practices to normalize relations. So this is for the staff of international organization, Myanmar staff, local staff. The second point is related to the NUG. Is there any progress into recognizing the NUG as the real government of, do you see any change in the international community related to recognition of the NUG?
I think the recognition of the NUG has basically hit the maximum that it can go for now. And most governments, most of the acknowledgement comes from parliaments. Some governments have been friendly to the NUG. Governmental leaders have met with NUG representatives, but there hasn't been an official recognition of NUG as the government. And that really depends on some of the stronger states taking lead. But also, we are in a context where even the UN is talking about, we leave it up to the region to take leadership. So if our region, if everyone is saying it's up to the 5-point consensus, it's up to ASEAN, regional leadership comes first, and then we're looking at ASEAN and they're just sitting on their hands, it's very frustrating. It's extremely frustrating because they've been empowered to basically do nothing. So I think we really need to we really need to get a few people to kick some asses to get things back into gear. I think we do need I hope that we can use the realization about the airstrikes. We can use the data and the information about airstrikes taking place this morning and the past few days to wake Jakarta up and wake up the rest of ASEAN. I think we do need to do that. And you know, INGOs make a lot of compromises. Some of them have come up with any kind of justification to say, oh, we have to recognize these people so that we can go in there and help people. But the line has been drawn very, very clearly. Local people do not trust humanitarian actors who are willing to compromise and follow the orders of the military junta. They have been burned already by showcase situations where INGOs hand out food aid under the supervision of an illegal junta. The illegal junta then takes the credit, but also the people on the ground who receive that aid feel extremely scared and worried that their security is being jeopardized. And then they feel nothing but contempt for these INGOs. So I think we do need to understand that being in the country is not the only way to help people. There are very many networks on the ground who are able to get money and resources into the country and to the communities that need it for much less than what the INGOs are charging their donors. So, of course, INGOs will not like to hear this because it means if they want to help the movement, they basically are walking away from their jobs or moving their jobs elsewhere. So they will always find an excuse to stay in the country. And they would say, even if one child could be fed by us, it's worth all the compromise. But I don't think so. Not when those child's parents are being killed by the guys who compromise this.
Now, the last question, is there any positive news you can share about Myanmar before concluding this updates? So far, we have really discussed how negative is the environment, how hopeless is ASEAN, all things that we know for some time, how the UN agency are also playing the game, an international organization too, plus the atrocities on the other side of bombing and even between neighboring countries. We have seen not much protection being offered to the refugees that are seeking refuge here in Thailand. But is there anything that you can say that gives some optimistic view, even if limited?
In recent weeks, since the last update, since I joined you in the last update, I've had the privilege of making some trips all around the border. And one of the amazing things is there's so many young people who are so talented, who are still so passionate and so determined to make to change the situation. And they actually have been incredibly inspiring. There are so many women. I knew them since they were very young, and now they are not so young. But they have become these amazing, wise, and compassionate leaders who have been very creative and resilient in how they deal with this crisis. So I think in the end, there is the fighting, there's the fighting back, there's the advocacy, there's what's going on the ground, but there's also people taking care of each other, people caring for each other despite this ugly mess and this brutality, people still talking about the future and being focused on building a future for their communities, people talking with passion still about energy, about politics. So I think the good thing is there are thousands of young people out there who still believe in the struggle and the revolution, who are still determined and seem to have, they don't suffer from fatigue like our donors do. Um, they they are out there doing all kinds of things, and there are women activists, kick-ass feminists who still continue with the work. And I must say, there have been a lot of donor fatigue in the humanitarian sector, but we have been lucky that there are still donors who are concerned about human rights and democracy and who still find the funds and the energy and the time to spend with us and our peer organizations. So we are still able to do our work. We feel really sorry that people facing humanitarian emergency are not able to get the resources that they deserve or even the respect that they deserve. But we also see young people and women on the ground and community workers on the ground who find so many ways to give more for less. They are on the ground. They are still doing the work. Even when INGOs are saying, oh, we don't have enough money to do this, they can take whatever money there is and still feed IDPs. They can still get medicines to those who need it. Whatever they do, they are so smart, they're able to go under the radar, and that's what's happening on the ground. There are people running schools so that children don't have to go to school under the junta. So, there is, in some ways, the depressing tragedy and violence and brutality on this level. But underneath that, because we don't see them, because they don't want to go, they do not want to be public for their security so that they can keep on doing the work. There is a whole world of resilience, action, determination, and just as important, compassion and care for each other. It's happening. So I must say, I was really hit hard by the news of that airstrike this morning. But in the end, those people were actually setting up a people's administration. They were running a local government by themselves. And that's why they became a target. If they were sitting at home not doing anything, they would have been safe. So I think this junta is afraid. That's why they had to launch airstrikes on unarmed civilians. And we are so sorry to all the families who lost loved ones in the airstrike this morning. But we also have to care for everyone who survived, everyone who survives in this revolution, because the survivors are still taking care of each other and still working for the future. I think if we have to remember that and carry that with us till the next update, please do so. We're going to have more and more depressing and tragic news, but don't forget, the revolution hasn't given up, the women haven't given up, the people in the IDP camps haven't given up, and the young people definitely have not given up. Sorry, you're muted. You're muted, Rosalia. Alia.
Okay. So given now just the last minute question. So given what Debbie has just said, how can individuals donate to the small groups on the ground?
Good question. Now, there is a friend from the Milk Tea Alliance in the audience, and there are so many friends in the network who are organizing small donations for different groups. Just get in touch with us, and we can find someone that you can help. There are so many groups all around the border. There's even a friend here who's joining us from the Indian border, who's been helping people affected by the violence in Sagaing and Chin State. So there's so many people doing, all these invisible angels doing amazing work. So let's support each other. And if you want to make a donation or you want to help, get in touch and we'll find something for you to do. Something non-violent, okay?
So I need also to share that Junction has a small grant program. So we are talking about small grant of about average $2,500 for small community in crisis. And crisis is understood in a very broad sense, from political crisis, environmental crisis, and all kind of health crisis, all kind of humanitarian crisis. So it's a very broad defined term. We have a call up to 17 of this month. So for small group in need of matching fund or whatever start fund or whatever fund just for emergency, I think this is something to consider. I think we are going to share the information here in the chat as well as on Facebook. Again, it's a small amount, but can be of use. It's for entire Southeast Asia, by the way. It's not limited to Myanmar, but can be for sure of use to people in Myanmar or on the border with Myanmar. For the updates, the next one, we have not fixed the date, but it's going to be also on the same day in May, basically. So we are going to inform when it will be. And again, hopefully there is even more good news about the resilience of the people of Myanmar, and hopefully some positive developments with all the other agencies too. And I hope to see you all back again very soon in May. In the meantime, we also have an event at Sea Junction on the 26th about African migration to Thailand, which is a topic that not many people are aware. So thank you again for all the participants here on Zoom and on Facebook, and see you all in 1 month time.
See you in a month's time. Don't forget to drop by Sea Junction if you're in town.
All right.
And yes, the place is looking gorgeous. And I promise to come to the next update with a joke. Definitely, at
Okay.
least one joke.
Okay, the next update we will do in person at Sea Junction. That seems like a very good idea.
Okay.
Okay,
Take care, everybody.
bye
Bye.
bye. Bye.
Bye.